What if I told you that reality does not change when you try harder, but when you stop trying at all? This single idea challenges everything you were taught about effort, control, and success. Jacobo Grinberg spent years studying consciousness, the brain, and ancient knowledge systems, and what he discovered was deeply unsettling. Reality is not something you push, chase, or force into existence. It is something you tune into through awareness. Most people believe the world changes only through action, struggle, and constant thinking. But Grinberg found that effort often locks reality into place. The harder the mind pushes, the more rigid perception becomes. This is why so many people feel stuck, even when they are doing everything right. Awareness, not effort, is what determines how reality appears. There is one simple word that interrupts this pattern instantly. A word so common that you use it every day, yet almost no one understands its true power. This word does not motivate you or excite you. It changes something deeper. It shifts perception itself. When perception changes, reality follows. Grinberg called this a change in the structure of awareness. When awareness shifts, the world reorganizes, not symbolically, but structurally. In lesser-known studies, Grinberg observed that perception behaves like a field that responds to attention. When attention is fragmented, reality feels heavy and fixed. When attention becomes whole, reality becomes flexible. This is not positive thinking or imagination. Grinberg studied shamans, neuroscientists, and consciousness explorers, and noticed a clear pattern. Those who could influence reality did not use force. They used stillness, they used awareness, and they used language in a precise and intentional way. The word you will learn in this video works like a switch. It pulls awareness out of reaction, fear, and mental noise. The moment this happens, thoughts lose their grip, emotions soften, and reality no longer feels like it is happening to you. It begins to feel like it is responding to you. Many people never experience this because they are taught to visualize harder, affirm louder, or push more. Grinberg warned that these methods often increase tension, and tension collapses awareness instead of expanding it. True change begins when awareness becomes quiet. By the end of this video, you will understand why reality does not obey effort. You will learn how a single word can reorganize perception instantly, and why Jacobo Grinberg believed real power begins when awareness becomes still. Welcome to Awakened Synchronicity. If this knowledge resonates with you, subscribe to the channel and stay until the end, because what you are about to learn may change how you experience reality forever. Before we talk about the hidden power of awareness, we need to understand why reality feels so solid and unchangeable to most people. From the moment we are born, we are taught to see the world as separate from ourselves. We learn that events happen to us, that circumstances control our lives, and that reality is something outside of our influence. This belief is so deeply rooted that we rarely question it. We accept it as absolute truth. Jacobo Grinberg called this belief the main illusion. He explained that the sense of a fixed external reality arises because our awareness is fragmented. When attention is scattered, pulled in many directions by thoughts, emotions, and distractions, our perception becomes rigid. We begin to see patterns as permanent, situations as unchangeable, and life as something that happens to us rather than with us. Even our brains contribute to this illusion. The brain interprets sensory input, fills in gaps, and creates a coherent story about the world. But this story is not reality itself. It is a filtered version shaped by past experiences, expectations, and habitual thinking. When awareness is divided or distracted, the brain's interpretation feels like a solid truth. We mistake this interpretation for reality, and the world seems immovable, even though it is actually fluid and responsive. Grinberg observed that when awareness becomes whole, when attention is unified and present, the sense of rigidity begins to dissolve. Patterns that seemed permanent start to shift. Situations that appeared fixed reveal new possibilities. The world no longer feels like a separate, unchangeable force, but a living field that responds to the coherence of our attention. In everyday life, most people never notice this because their focus is constantly fragmented. Thoughts about the past, worries about the future, and emotional reactions to daily events pull attention in different directions. This scattered awareness reinforces the illusion of a fixed reality, making it hard to perceive the subtle ways consciousness actually shapes the world around us. Jacobo Grinberg devoted his life to studying consciousness, perception, and the mysteries of the human mind. His research led him to a central insight that challenges everything we think we know about reality. Most people assume that the brain creates the world we experience. We believe that what we see, hear, and feel is generated entirely inside our minds, but Grinberg discovered that this is not the case. Reality is not produced by the brain. The brain does not construct the universe. It only interprets a much deeper, underlying field of information. This field exists beyond the limits of the senses and responds directly to consciousness itself. In other words, the world we perceive is shaped by the state of our awareness, not by the mechanical firing of neurons. He called this deeper dimension the syntergic field. To understand it, imagine an invisible network of information that connects everything. This field is not theoretical. It is a practical reality that governs the way events unfold, how objects appear, and how experiences are structured. Everything exists inside this field. Every thought, every movement, every sensation. What we see, what we interpret as reality, depends on how our awareness interacts with this field. When attention is scattered, fragmented or clouded by emotion, the field appears chaotic and unchangeable. But when attention is unified, coherent and present, the field reorganizes itself in response to that clarity. Within the syntergic field, words play a surprisingly powerful role. Words are not merely sounds or symbols, they are tools that shape attention. When we speak, think, or hear words, they direct awareness towards specific patterns in the field. This is why language can influence perception in ways that feel instantaneous. Certain words carry the ability to reorient consciousness, redirect focus, and shift the organization of the field itself. The right word used with intention can interrupt automatic reactions, dissolve mental noise, and realign awareness with the fluid nature of reality. The word Grinberg identified as most powerful for this purpose is simple, yet profound. Observe. This is not a word of action, ambition, or force. It does not ask the mind to think harder, judge, or plan. It does not demand emotion or reaction. It simply asks the consciousness to witness, to notice, to be fully present without interference. Saying observe internally or consciously directing attention with this word activates a shift. Awareness moves from participating in the ongoing reactions of the mind to standing apart as a witness. It pulls the observer out of habitual patterns and allows the underlying field to show itself. Understanding the difference between observer and participant is crucial. When we are trapped as participants, we are constantly reacting. We respond to emotions, thoughts, and circumstances without pause. We live as if the world is happening to us rather than with us. In this state, patterns feel rigid. Emotions control perception. Circumstances appear fixed. The mind, tied to reaction, reinforces the illusion of solidity. But when we consciously adopt the role of observer, something extraordinary happens. The patterns that once seemed immutable begin to loosen. Awareness steps back from identification with the moment, and reality itself appears to shift. Observing does not mean ignoring or detaching in a careless way. It means holding attention in a way that allows coherence to emerge. This coherence is the language through which the syntergic field reorganizes itself. Grinberg emphasized that this process is subtle. It cannot be forced, manipulated, or rushed. The act of observing is not a technique for control. It is a doorway into the natural order of perception. By observing, we stop feeding the fragmented, reactive mind that perceives reality as fixed. Instead, we allow awareness to unify, quiet the internal noise, and connect with the underlying field. When attention is fully present, even the smallest observation can create a structural change in perception. What once seemed heavy and immovable can now feel flexible and responsive. The world, once separate, begins to respond to consciousness rather than resist it. The power of the word observe lies in its simplicity and purity. It strips away the layers of judgment, expectation, and habitual reaction that distort awareness. Unlike words of instruction or motivation, it does not aim to change external circumstances directly. Instead, it changes the relationship between consciousness and reality. When we truly observe, we create a space where perception is no longer filtered through fear, desire, or distraction. Thought slows, emotion softens, and attention becomes coherent. In that moment, the syntergic field aligns itself with the clarity of observation. Reality shifts, because the mind is no longer trying to force it. The observer witnesses the unfolding of existence, and in doing so, subtly participates in its reorganization. To practice this, Grinberg suggested beginning with small moments. Notice your surroundings without labeling or judging. Notice your thoughts without following them into reaction. Notice your emotions without identifying with them. Silently repeat the word observe to anchor awareness. The word serves as a reminder to step out of habitual participation and into conscious witnessing. Over time, this simple practice trains the mind to recognize the difference between participating in reactive patterns and observing them with clarity. Even brief moments of observation can produce a noticeable shift in perception, making the world feel more fluid and responsive. Grinberg also highlighted that this is not a passive exercise. Observing is an active engagement of awareness, but it is an engagement that does not impose force. It is the conscious use of attention to unify the mind and connect with the syntergic field. When practiced consistently, observation becomes a natural state rather than a deliberate act. Awareness becomes the instrument through which reality expresses its inherent flexibility. Patterns that once seemed permanent now appear transient, and possibilities previously hidden become visible. Life, which once felt predetermined, begins to reveal a responsive dimension. The distinction between observer and participant is subtle but transformative. When participating, every thought and emotion locks attention into a linear, reactive mode. The mind interprets this as rigidity in the external world. When observing, attention no longer reinforces reactivity. Instead, it creates a coherent field in which perception is fluid. Even external circumstances remain unchanged, yet they appear different. Events feel lighter, interactions become more meaningful, and the flow of experience is less constrained by habitual mental patterns. Observation in this sense is the key that Grinberg identified for engaging with the deeper structure of reality. Words, awareness, and observation together form a triad that reshapes perception. Observe directs attention. Attention organizes the field. The field responds. Grinberg's work shows that consciousness does not merely interpret reality, it participates in its unfolding. The observer does not act on the world through force, but through alignment with the field. This alignment is subtle and profound. Each moment of conscious observation reinforces coherence, strengthens awareness, and reveals the responsive nature of reality. The process demonstrates that control is not about domination, effort, or struggle. True influence emerges from clarity, coherence, and attentive observation. As awareness grows, the distinction between observer and participant becomes clearer. Participants are always caught in cycles of reaction, evaluating, judging, and trying to fix the world. Observers, however, experience reality as it is, free from unnecessary distortion. Patterns, relationships, and circumstances no longer dictate perception. Instead, perception itself organizes and guides experience. Through the word observe, consciousness steps into a state of neutrality and clarity. This state does not suppress life, but enhances it, revealing hidden possibilities and subtle dynamics that are normally overlooked. Grinberg's teachings also emphasize that observation is accessible to everyone. It does not require meditation mastery, intellectual understanding, or esoteric practice. It requires only the willingness to pause, witness, and direct attention consciously. By practicing observation in daily life while walking, listening, or even performing routine tasks, awareness gradually unifies, fragmented attention becomes coherent. The syntergic field responds more consistently, and reality begins to feel responsive rather than rigid. Small, repeated acts of observation accumulate, producing lasting changes in how life is perceived and experienced. Through this lens, the world is no longer an external force imposing itself on consciousness. Instead, it becomes a co-creative space where awareness plays a central role in shaping perception. Observing is the gateway to this understanding. It allows consciousness to step out of habitual participation, reduce internal noise, and engage with reality in a way that is both subtle and powerful. The shift is immediate, yet it deepens over time, revealing layers of responsiveness that are usually invisible. In Grinberg's view, this is the essence of human potential, the ability to engage with the field of reality consciously, deliberately, and coherently. The act of observing changes not just how we perceive the world, but how we relate to it. Fear, tension, and automatic reactions begin to lose their grip. Emotional intensity softens, and clarity emerges. Awareness becomes the organizing principle rather than thought or habit. The observer experiences the world as alive, dynamic, and flexible, while the participant remains caught in the illusion of rigidity. In practice, this means that even small moments of observation can produce shifts in relationships, decisions, and the flow of daily life. Life is no longer a series of uncontrollable events, but a living interplay between consciousness and the field. Ultimately, Grinberg's insight reveals that reality is not fixed. It only appears that way when attention is scattered and fragmented. Through the conscious use of the word observe, awareness can step back, unify, and create coherence. The syntergic field responds to this clarity, revealing the fluid, responsive nature of existence. Observation is both simple and profound. It does not require elaborate techniques or external tools. It is a direct, accessible way to engage with the underlying structure of reality and participate consciously in its unfolding. Through observing, awareness becomes the force that organizes perception, and the world begins its shift naturally in response to clarity, coherence, and presence. When observation becomes habitual, the mind recognizes the difference between reacting and witnessing. The observer experiences life without being trapped in the patterns of thought, emotion, and habit that normally dictate perception. Attention becomes coherent, the syntergic field aligns with awareness, and reality responds in subtle yet powerful ways. Through Grinberg's work, it becomes clear that the greatest tool for engaging with reality is not effort, willpower, or control, but the conscious, deliberate act of observing. Awareness, guided by this simple word, transforms perception, showing that reality is far more flexible and responsive than we ever imagined. When someone truly observes, the experience is subtle yet profound. At first, it may feel as though nothing is happening. Thoughts that normally race from one topic to another begin to slow down. The constant chatter in the mind, the mental commentary, the judgments, the endless planning starts to fade into the background. Emotions, which often feel overwhelming or uncontrollable, lose their intensity. Fear becomes less sharp, desire less urgent, anger less pressing. This does not mean emotions disappear completely, but their grip on attention loosens. Reality, which once felt rigid, fixed, or unchangeable, suddenly begins to feel flexible, responsive, and fluid. This is not imagination or a daydream. It is a structural shift. The way awareness interacts with the syntergic field changes, and perception itself reorganizes, revealing possibilities that were previously hidden. Observation works because it reduces internal noise. Normally, the mind is filled with conflicting thoughts, scattered attention, and emotional turbulence. Each of these distractions creates a kind of interference that reinforces the sense of rigidity in the world. By consciously observing, awareness steps away from reaction and judgment. The mind becomes quieter, the internal noise diminishes. With less noise, awareness can unify and coherence begins to emerge naturally. This coherence is not abstract. It is tangible within the syntergic field. Patterns of thought, emotion, and perception begin to align, allowing the underlying structure of reality to respond. Events, situations, and interactions that once felt immovable suddenly show a subtle fluidity, and the world appears to respond in ways that feel immediate and natural. One of the most common mistakes people make is assuming that observing requires effort, control, or the deliberate forcing of calm. Many attempt to quiet the mind through sheer willpower, trying to suppress thoughts, push away emotions, or manipulate attention. This approach almost always backfires. Effort creates tension, and tension fragments awareness, reinforcing the very rigidity one is trying to escape. True observation is effortless. It is not controlling, judging, or manipulating. It is allowing awareness to witness without interference. It is a receptive stance rather than an active struggle. The observer does not impose will on the mind. The observer allows consciousness to expand, creating the conditions for coherence to emerge naturally. Applying the word observe in daily life is surprisingly simple yet transformative. In moments of stress, silently saying observe can shift attention away from panic or anxiety. In moments of fear, repeating observe anchors awareness, allowing perception to widen beyond the immediate threat. In moments of desire, attachment, or craving, saying observe pulls attention from compulsion to conscious witnessing. The word does not attempt to change external circumstances, nor does it aim to eliminate emotion. Instead, it redirects attention in a subtle, deliberate way. With repeated use, this practice trains the mind to recognize the difference between reactive participation and conscious observation. Over time, reality begins to shift without struggle, without force, and without tension. The shift is structural, emerging from the alignment of attention rather than the manipulation of events. The reason this shift feels instant is rooted in the nature of awareness itself. Awareness does not operate within the linear constraints of time. Thoughts, memories, and plans unfold sequentially, but awareness exists outside this temporal structure. When attention is fully present, observing without interference, the syntergic field reorganizes immediately in response to coherent awareness. There is no delay, no waiting period, and no gradual build-up required. The moment attention unifies, the underlying patterns of perception realign. This is why even brief moments of true observation can feel transformative. Reality appears to bend, expand, or respond instantaneously because the effect occurs at the level of consciousness, which is beyond time. In practice, the instant shift in perception can be subtle at first. One might notice that thoughts are less urgent, that emotional reactions are softened, or that the environment feels more fluid. These changes can be observed in simple daily activities. A conversation becomes easier, a problem less daunting, a moment of beauty more vivid. Each instance of conscious observation strengthens the coherence of awareness, reinforcing the responsive nature of the syntergic field. The more frequently one applies the word observe, the more natural this state becomes. Eventually, awareness no longer requires a conscious prompt. Observation becomes the default mode of engagement with reality. Observation also allows us to disentangle from habitual patterns. Normally, reactions to situations are automatic, driven by past experiences, conditioning, and unresolved emotions. By observing, one interrupts this automatic cycle. Attention is no longer hijacked by repetitive thought patterns or emotional impulses. Instead, it anchors in the present, witnessing reality as it is, moment by moment. This anchoring allows the observer to see connections and possibilities that are normally hidden by the noise of habitual reactivity. Patterns that once seemed fixed begin to reveal flexibility, showing that reality responds not to force, but to clarity of attention. The structural nature of this shift becomes apparent when awareness consistently practices observation. Thoughts that once dominated perception lose their grip. Emotional intensity, previously overwhelming, is tempered. Situations that felt unchangeable begin to feel fluid and responsive. Even external events remain the same, yet they appear different. The mind, no longer enmeshed in constant reaction, experiences reality as an interactive, co-creative space. Observation does not manipulate outcomes directly. It changes the lens through which reality is experienced, aligning perception with the natural coherence of the syntergic field. Through repeated practice, the observer learns to navigate life with subtlety and precision. Challenges no longer provoke automatic tension. Emotions no longer dictate responses. Thought patterns, once rigid, become flexible instruments of awareness rather than constraints on perception. By maintaining this receptive stance, the observer cultivates a state in which reality can respond immediately to coherent attention. This state is not a product of will, control, or technique. It is the natural effect of awareness stepping out of fragmentation and into unified observation. Even small moments of observation can generate profound shifts. Pausing during a stressful task, silently repeating "observe" and allowing attention to witness the experience produces immediate changes in perception. The world feels less rigid, thoughts are less urgent, emotions are tempered, and the observer experiences a sense of coherence that reshapes engagement with reality. Over time, these small moments accumulate, creating lasting changes in how life is perceived and experienced. Awareness becomes the organizing principle, and reality responds not to effort or struggle, but to coherent observation. This practice demonstrates that the essence of human potential lies not in action, force, or control, but in the alignment of consciousness with the underlying field of reality. The word observe serves as a key to this alignment. By directing attention toward witnessing rather than reacting, the observer accesses a dimension of perception that is always present, yet often overlooked. The shift is instant because awareness freed from the constraints of fragmented attention interacts directly with the syntergic field. Reality responds, not because it is being forced to change, but because it is inherently responsive to coherent consciousness. Awareness, observation, and coherence together create a dynamic interplay that reshapes perception. As the mind quiets and attention unifies, habitual patterns lose their rigidity. Emotional reactions soften, thought processes slow, and the observer experiences reality as fluid and responsive. Each application of the word observe strengthens this capacity, training consciousness to recognize the difference between reaction and witnessing. Through this process, the observer discovers that reality is not fixed or immutable, but a living, responsive field that mirrors the coherence of awareness. Over time, the practice transforms not only perception, but also engagement with life. Stressful situations no longer dominate attention. Emotional turbulence no longer dictates experience. Thought patterns, once automatic and limiting, become flexible tools for navigating reality. The syntergic field, responding to coherent observation, aligns with the observer, producing subtle yet profound shifts in how events are perceived and experienced. The process reveals that the apparent solidity of the world is a reflection of fragmented awareness, and that by observing, consciousness steps into its natural, responsive role. Ultimately, the practice of observation demonstrates that change does not require effort, struggle, or force. It requires only coherent attention, the willingness to witness, and the consistent application of awareness. The shift feels instant because it occurs at the level of consciousness, which operates outside time and linear causality. Thoughts slow, emotions lose intensity, and reality appears fluid. The observer, free from habitual reactivity, engages with the world as a responsive, co-creative space. The simple act of silently saying, "Observe," directs attention, reduces internal noise, creates coherence, and aligns awareness with the syntergic field, producing immediate and tangible shifts in perception. Observation is not a technique, but a natural state that emerges when awareness is allowed to unify through this practice. The mind learns to step out of habitual participation, reduce internal noise, and experience reality as flexible and responsive. The moment attention is coherent, the syntergic field reorganizes itself. Time, linear thought, and emotional turbulence no longer block the structural shift in perception. Reality responds instantly to awareness, demonstrating that the world is not rigid, but dynamically aligned with conscious observation. By consistently applying the word "observe" in daily life, the observer cultivates a state of presence, clarity, and responsiveness. Stress, fear, desire, and tension no longer dominate attention. Awareness becomes coherent, and the syntergic field reflects this coherence in perception. Even minor moments of observation produce structural shifts in reality, revealing possibilities that were previously hidden. The observer experiences life as fluid, interactive, and responsive, demonstrating that the essence of Grinberg's insight lies not in effort or control, but in conscious, coherent observation. With repeated practice, observation becomes second nature. Attention no longer fragments under stress or emotion. Thought processes slow naturally, emotions soften, and perception aligns with the inherent responsiveness of the syntergic field. Reality, once perceived as fixed and rigid, appears flexible and malleable. The observer engages with the world from a place of coherence rather than reaction. The simple, silent word "observe" acts as a continual reminder to maintain this stance, producing instant shifts in perception and demonstrating that reality is always responsive to coherent awareness, independent of time or external manipulation. Reality does not respond to force, it responds to awareness. Jacobo Grinberg showed us that when attention becomes coherent, the world begins to shift naturally. The simple word "observe" restores this coherence instantly, allowing perception to flow and reality to respond. Try it now, quietly and without effort, and notice the difference for yourself. If you found this insight valuable, like this video and subscribe to our channel for more from Awakened Synchronicity.